help women, save lives, and peacefully end abortion where you live.
I can tell you exactly what would happen. The infant would be delivered. The infant would be kept comfortable. The infant would be resuscitated if that's what the mother and the family desired.
You were serious about that?
Be inspired to change hearts and minds by joining over 1 million volunteers taking part in the global movement happening in your neighborhood.
She says, pray that I can get through this abortion. And I said, oh, no. So she went ahead and went into the abortion clinic. And she just came out. She told us, I'm not going to get the abortion. We just had a baby saved. We had a baby saved in Memphis today. Praise the Lord.
This is the 40 Days for Life podcast with your host, Sean Carney.
Hello, and thank you for joining us today on the 40 Days for Life podcast. I am Sean Carney, the president of 40 Days for Life, and your host for this podcast, which is dedicated to helping you end abortion where you live. And recently, we suffered a loss in doing that in Ohio. And many of you have seen the headlines. It's been in the news for a number of weeks. We are going to use that as a reason to cover something that we haven't covered in a long time, which is a state-by-state analysis of what in the world is going on in a post-Roe America. How many states have banned abortion? How many have a lot of restrictions? If you see the headlines about Ohio, it's the end of the world. And post-Roe, every state is pro-abortion and clamoring for abortion. And that is simply not the case. So as much as this changes, very often we will have a relatively up-to-date breakdown of what's going on in the states, what that means for the future of the pro-life movement, where there's hope, where there's no hope, and what you can do about it. And so that is the important topic of today's podcast. And joining me on this is Heather Gardner. Welcome.
Thanks, Sean. Glad to be here.
You acted like we didn't know we were rolling.
I didn't.
We are recording.
I thought we were having lunch right now.
Yeah, put down the sandwich. And of course, our general counsel, Matt Britton, joins us on the podcast as well. Matt, welcome back.
I knew you were rolling. I'm always ready, Sean. I got your back.
You're always rolling.
I got you exactly. I know when we're rolling. There's like a little thing that tells us that.
It's a little thing called producer John, who talks a lot. So,
well, thanks for having me on. In light of some bad news, and you and I have gotten some texts. I'm sure Heather has too. And it is sad, lamenting it. A sad day, sort of a major state in elections and otherwise. Ohio enshrined the right to abortion, which went very far in its constitution, which is their new playbook, which we'll get to.
Yeah, one of the things that I was encouraged by in the media interviews I did and other stories that were out there, I know this happened with the lady that interviewed me from the Wall Street Journal, is even some of the media recognize how the Kansas referendum of last year and then Ohio recently, the wording's very confusing. And if you're pro-life, if you go in there and you're like, I think I'm for this, I don't know, and you need like 3 lawyers to tell you how to vote. You're like, I'm pro-life, what do I do? Mm-hmm. Have you heard that, Heather, and seen that the wording is just bad, I think, from our perspective?
The wording's bad, but there's also this intentional conflating of words, which is so frustrating as, for instance, abortion and miscarriage, conflating those two words. And we need to have these laws because otherwise the pro-lifers, the anti-choicers, are trying to put women in jail for having a miscarriage. I mean, just utterly ridiculous things like that. So that's what I'm kind of seeing, and it's good that we have pro-life legislative groups that are pointing out and breaking down what these different things mean and what they're saying to help. But a lot of people may not know that, and they don't know any better. And
yeah, but what Sean's saying is more important than that, and it's insidious. Interpreting a law and a complex law like the IRS code, right? You get an accountant. What he's saying is when you go to vote,
right?
Does no mean I'm against it or for it? And I was DA for a number of terms, and I was also county attorney. And when you do that, you get to represent what's called the local board of elections, depending on the state. But it's the Board of Elections, and the State Board of Elections, the SBE, the State Board of Elections, determine how that goes on your ballot. If it's a county referendum, then the County Board of Elections do it, City Board, and if it's a state, and that they're fighting. They know that, right? So there are presumably lawyers going, look, we need to be clear. People need to know. Some of the stuff like the Soil Conservation District, nobody will ever know what they're voting for.
Right.
But this is a yes vote means that women have the right to abort. They're not allowed to say that because then they're re-saying, oh, that's what's going to go in the Constitution.
And it's like, do you believe in healthcare and that people are good?
No.
Yeah.
and
Like, well,
Yeah.
yeah, I think so.
Yeah. So
Or do you-
therefore, vote yes for this.
But I got to say, the last phrase of the amendment to the Ohio Constitution was clear.
But the last word is abortion. They kind of buried it.
Right. But they said, well, that last phrase is clear, but that doesn't mean if you vote yes, I'm against it.
Yeah.
It's that kind of a thing. It's proving the dog didn't bark. It's the double negative.
And depending on what the viewer or the listeners heard, what it allows is you can be a minor, have an abortion at 40 weeks, and not have your parents' consent. In addition to that, you can run off with another adult as a minor and have an abortion at 40 weeks without your parents ever knowing, and the adult that participates in it is shielded from any legal action. That's crazy. You would never know that when you go in to vote. You'd have no clue. And that's why the pro-abortion folks have done a great job. I mean, I hate to give them credit, but their ads, if you watch their ads, you're like,
Yep.
wow, we got to vote yes. Nuclear war is going to happen. COVID's going to come back. The ads were very confusing, and it was all, no, this doesn't allow abortion through 40 weeks. That's crazy. Or no. And the way that they word it, they say, well, where does it say that? Where does it say that it allows abortion for 40 weeks? It doesn't. It doesn't say anything. There's no restrictions. It's like Canada. So
Yeah, it's like proving the dog didn't bark. I mean, that's what I'm saying. Yeah, it is. It's no law. It's no law. It's the same as New Mexico. No restrictions, anytime up to birth. No parental consent, and of course it's constitutional, right? And we're going to get into that. We won't go through every state,
Sure.
but
Right. I do want to say, from my personal perspective, and just 40 Days for Life at large, but personally, when I first started traveling and speaking and stuff, I went to Ohio all the time. It's one of my favorite pro-life states. I hate it otherwise. I'd care less about Ohio State. But the people and the pro-life movement, it's really the birthplace of the pro-life movement. Most people don't know that. Heartbeat International started. Ohio was the location of the first ever pregnancy center. I spoke for them on their 40th anniversary. They opened in 1970, a few years before Roe. It has great people. It has great Catholics. We don't get to do this often because it hardly happens, but every Catholic bishop in Ohio came out and told everyone to vote no, and they poured $1 million into the campaign to combat it. You never see that. So I'm just sharing some good news of this isn't like California where we're throwing our hands up in the air. Ohio is a very red state, used to be purple, but it's a very, very pro-life state. And there's a lot of comments on social media, people criticizing the people there, but we know great folks there. It's a great state for 40 Days for Life. And I think a lot of people were confused, and I think fear played a factor. So just as it did in Kansas, but with that, it's a huge defeat. Okay, so let's move through some of this, because what you're hearing is Ohio is pro-abortion. So, by the way, this goes beyond Roe, what they did in Ohio. But nobody's talking about the 23 states that are either banned abortion or highly regulate abortion. It's all just since Roe happened, all the states are going in and saying we love abortion. We're not getting any credit for the pro-life victories. So let's start with that. So there's a new, first off, there's 30 legal cases challenging abortion regulations. Or at least 30 legal cases challenging abortion regulations have been dropped. So that's significant. Post-Roe. At least 59 new pro-life bills have been signed into law. You never hear that in the media. And you've tried to keep up with this, but it's impossible.
right. I mean, I don't know when that was written, but that was then, and this is now. That's what I can tell you. And you could have, as I say, and we've started the Institute of Law and Justice, and we do track this and. Get on our website. We're going to be updating now that the fall campaign is over by the end of the year. our 50-state, our map, our interactive map, and it's going to come up with 5 things. Is abortion lawful? It's always immoral. But we don't have a justice system. We have a legal system. And is it legal? Under what circumstances? What are the exceptions? And is there parental notification? And it'll have how it's legal. So is it a constitutional amendment? Is it a statute? You can check that out. And the same 5 things will pop up. So we'll be updating that. But it changes. You know, I've had a couple people say, that's not the law in Idaho. We passed a total ban. And I say, yeah, but it's happening so fast. And there's something called injunction. So the pro-life movement, praise be to God, files an injunction against something, like allowing a mail-in abortion in a state that bans abortion, such as Tennessee or Alabama. And so we file an injunction, and then that's pending, and then there's a stay, and then an appellate court reverses the stay. We saw that in Texas and Washington. One federal court in Washington said you can send RU-486, and the Texas federal court said you can't on the same day, first time in history. So no one can get this perfect and up to the minute. And that's good because it's being litigated in 50 states plus the federal system. But I do want to say that abortion can be allowed or disallowed in a whole lot of ways. And there are many sources of law. And one of those, and the highest source, is the United States Constitution. And no law can violate the U.S. Constitution. And then Roe v. Wade said the U.S. Constitution allows abortion. And normal people read it and said, I did a scan of the document, the word abortion. Oh, it's not in there. It's under the right to privacy.
Alito was one of those normal people.
Yeah. So then they went back and scanned that, and they're like, actually, I couldn't find the word privacy in there either. And they're like, that's because we made up a case in 1973, actually before that, that talked about the right to privacy, which we invented. It's not in the Constitution.
Right.
But everybody knows you do have a reasonable expectation of privacy, right? Otherwise, burglars wouldn't be. So anyway, and that's called case law. So we have the Constitution, and then we have the judges that make case law. So for instance, in Montana, abortion is not in the Constitution, but the Montana Supreme Court in 1999 in the Armstrong v. State said the privacy provision of our Constitution covers abortion. Therefore, it's constitutional, not because it's in the Constitution, because the Supreme Court said it was, the state Supreme Court.
Yeah.
Then we have laws. That's what the legislature is doing. Like, we need to get new congressmen and women, right? They pass laws. We talked about this in a different podcast, Hamilton's Federalist 78. The court has neither will, that's passing of laws, force, that's enforcing the laws, law enforcement, but only judgment, and that's what courts do. And so legislatures and states pass laws, but there's a third and very overlooked thing called regulation. And the more bureaucrats we have in the world, the Faucis that tell you that aren't elected and tell you to wear a mask and get a shot, like the masks doesn't do anything. Everybody needs to wear a mask, but like three days ago, they're regulators. And then they go before Congress, which is the legislature. And the more bureaucratic we become, the more socialist we become, the more governed by bureaucrats and rules, not laws. And we were supposed to be a nation of laws. That was the whole thing of our Constitution. Don't forget that. That's how we got mail-in abortion. That was a pilot program through HHS. Yep. And so those regulators, and then, of course, you know what happens? They're temporary. They become a pilot program. Then COVID comes. They become permanent. Yep. And then all of a sudden, anybody can mail abortion. Can you mail it into Texas? We don't know. So I just wanted to let the folks know out there, the Constitution's the highest thing. That's the worst loss. Sean said it's a very pro-life state. Urbanization has made it not. It's like California and New York. They're very pro-life. If you ask anyone outside of the major urban centers, and everybody else, though, gets dragged along into LA, San Francisco, Sacramento. So I just wanted to give a brief outline and a plug for our interactive map.
And you plugged COVID and Fauci very early in this podcast. I thought we'd make it at least halfway.
I'm actually done. Would it look funny on screen if there was just an empty chair? I covered all my talking points.
I was like, we'll make it 15 minutes without Fauci. Nope, Fauci's here, baby. That's all right.
He's the chief bureaucrat.
Exactly. So switching from Fauci to some good news. Real quick, here's some new pro-life laws. Both Arkansas and Utah now require all the abortions to be done in hospitals. Now, why is that significant? Because that hurts Planned Parenthood. The only reason I don't like it a little bit is because it kind of legitimizes
Right.
abortion, like you're at the hospital. However, our experience has been less women will actually go to a hospital to have an abortion. It's just more complicated. We've closed some hospitals. Steve did one in Madison, Wisconsin. Brian Gibson closed a hospital through 40 Days for Life in 2011 up in Minneapolis. But that's
By the way, that's a good example of a law. That would never be in the Constitution because the next question is, what's a hospital?
Right.
And so they define that in the law or the regulations. It'll say, for instance, in such and such state, all abortions shall be performed by a medical doctor in a hospital. And then it'll say, and regulations shall be promulgated not inconsistent. And the regulations may define what a hospital is, what a medical doctor is, what type of degree you have. Can you be a podiatrist with a 2-year degree? Can you be a doctor of osteopathy and all that stuff? Those are regulations or they're laws. So that's a law. That can be changed. That can be changed the next legislative session.
Yeah.
Right? And that's the big deal about a constitution. For instance, in Wisconsin, they have to put something, a referendum on the ballot over and over and over again. Sometimes it takes a supermajority, a 75% vote. Sometimes a 2/3 vote, which is also a different kind of supermajority. Sometimes it's a 50% vote. You saw that debated in Ohio. Should we change the rule
Right.
to make it 60%?
Right.
And all that. And so there's a lot of political maneuvering. But that's what I'm talking about. And I wanted to say, well, I know, don't mean to take up all the time, but I do want to say we've debated this. You're exactly right. Saying that abortions have to be performed in a hospital can be easily debated on both sides of the issue because it legitimizes it. Then you have good pro-life people like inspecting the abortion room and like, what am I doing? I'm totally against this. I'm not going to.
But what if my wife's like having a baby on one floor?
That's what I was just thinking.
or your
There's the
grandpa's
labor and
having-
delivery floor, and then there's the abortion floor.
But
and-
somebody going in for chemo.
Happened to a friend of ours. They had a pro-life OBGYN, but she was out. And so the on-call doctor also performed abortions that delivered her baby. And it was just the on-call doctor.
What are you going to do?
I mean, like, are you going like directly to kill someone else's kid? Thank you for helping my child. I mean, and they found out later, and they were just, and of course the OBGYN was like, we didn't know, and she's like, how can you not know? You don't do due diligence or whatever. But
Here's what I like about it is that most of these hospitals are private.
it should be in a morgue.
Yeah,
That's where they
that
should
would
be.
be that would.
It's not healthcare.
They didn't put that in the law.
It's not healthcare, and it kills the spirit of the mom.
But
and it
you
kills the baby.
can, and we have raised public stigma of a hospital doing. You are a legitimate healthcare organization. You're doing abortions, and hospitals are like, we're not making any money off of it. It's not a huge part of their. It's not worth it because the hospitals raise a lot of money. They all have foundations, and they run around and they have. Susan had a heart attack, and she's alive today. And here's a picture with her grandkids. It's very feel good, and abortions. Not feel good, even if you support it. So it's interesting. So yeah, Arkansas.
Although I wonder whether hospitals in Ohio will have signs like rainbow signs protecting your constitutional rights right over the women's center. Now, if it's in the Constitution, then they can celebrate more.
Yeah.
They can, but this is the 40 Days for Life factor, which is all this is market driven, and they can have a law that says you can kill a kindergartner. But in the end, this is a woman deciding she's going in or she's not, and whether we can convince her not to. I mean, I don't know if minors are going to stomp into abortion clinics at 40 weeks and have an abortion. I hope not. We'll do everything we can in Ohio to stop it. But these laws are so extreme. They're really treating every woman like they are just mad and programmed and is like a magnetic force that they are
Every
dying
woman
to get.
and girl.
Yeah. I have to have an abortion or I'm not a woman.
Or a girl.
Or a girl. So, okay. This is great. And these stupid Republicans are so horrible at articulating like positive things. And this is one of the best ones. And people don't know this. They don't know this. We're going to list off these states. There is no Democrat in America that will publicly be able to go against this, what states are doing. And that is allocating funds for women who choose life, for pregnant women. Not just pregnancy resource centers, but the women themselves. You're just not going to have a Democrat say, I oppose giving a single pregnant woman government income. I'm fiscally conservative, and I think you are too. I don't have a problem with this whatsoever. If we're giving $500 million to Planned Parenthood of our tax funding, we should give money to somebody who chooses life. Here are the states: Mississippi, Arkansas, Kansas, North Dakota, Louisiana, Texas. Texas was doing it 3 years ago. Tennessee, and Utah. Utah expanded Medicaid.
And Texas actually doubled. So I think we first started out with $10 million. It quickly, and this is saying $25 million.
That's dated. I think it's 50.
It's 50 now,
It's
and
50.
that's what I was going to say. Is they every session it seems like they have a goal of doubling that, which is amazing.
But if you ask Democrats in Texas, they'll say when they were doing the heartbeat bill and Greg Abbott was running around promoting all this, a lot of the Democrats, state legislators were like, I couldn't go against that. He's backing it up. He's saying, hey, we're there for the women. They couldn't say they don't care about women. He's like, I didn't propose a bill that would give single women money when they had a baby. So it actually won hearts. I know we don't believe that in our political system, but the heartbeat bill, they really didn't want to go against the heartbeat bill. But once they said, but we're going to fund this if they have the baby, there's restrictions and all that stuff like anything else. But the Democrats said, I can't really go against this.
Yeah, there were some notable ones there because I know there was one in particular that was for so many years vehemently, still is very pro-abortion, but I remember this particular state legislature back in 2013 when we had HB2 at the Capitol with the orange versus blue and Hail Satan chants and all that kind of stuff. And this same senator recently came forward and reluctantly admitted, well, if we don't have abortions here, we've got to support women somehow. And so actually agreed to this allocating of funds to go towards helping alternatives to women's health care. And I was shocked when I heard friends that were in the legislature say that. And they said, yeah, there was a few pro-abortion legislatures that said that they were going to support this. And I was relieved because for so long they've been fighting a lot of these types of laws.
This is kind of fun. If you want good news after our Ohio Fauci rant. Arkansas did legislation to establish a monument as a memorial to the unborn. This is where you're like, I'm never rooting for the Razorbacks, but this is pretty awesome.
Sponsored by the Clintons?
Yeah, Hillary's gonna build it in their garage, actually. And then
Out of matchsticks. And then set it on
Louisiana,
fire.
you're always bragging on Louisiana as the most pro-life state. It's just phenomenal. June is the Sanctity of Preborn Life Month. But that's not true. It's Pride Month. How can it be Sanctity of Preborn Life Month? They're getting rid of Pride Month in Louisiana.
This is news to me.
Yeah, it's great. It's like a declaration. That's owning it.
Yeah.
That is owning it, not being embarrassed
Yeah.
of our position, not just politically, but morally.
Socially.
That will age well
Yeah.
historically. It's just, we go on this all the time, but it's just these former, the most stubborn slave states doing all this great pro-life stuff now. Unbelievable. Okay. This is cool. Arkansas, they're on a roll, banned public schools from working with organizations that talk about abortions to minors. So they kicked Planned Parenthood out of the schools, the whole state. Florida, Maine, and Montana enacted legislation protecting the rights of medical providers to not violate their own consciences. This is always a concern. You always bring it up because we're worried one day, what's going to happen.
But do we not already have those laws in place? That's what's confusing is so many of these laws that come out, it's isn't that already a law? Why are we having to enact more legislation to reiterate laws to protect conscience rights for medical professionals?
But it's medical providers. Is that different from physicians?
Oh,
Is that
good
the
question.
lady that works at the front?
I don't know.
We're putting you on the spot.
That's a definition of medical provider, but the answer probably is yes. It's different than physicians, but medical providers are the people who actually provide the services, not just schedule your appointment. But to answer your question, maybe, but as Oliver Wendell Holmes said, an unenforced law or an unenforceable law is no law at
It's
all. It's a bad
pointless.
law by definition. So it was under the Trump administration that the very first time that the protection of freedom of religious rights and conscience was even put into HHS. And it was a buddy of mine
Wow.
that headed that up. They created that position that he went into in order to do that. So if you're not enforcing it, if you let some people walk down the streets without masks on, and then you let another group who you disagree with walk down the street and you say, I'm going to give you tickets for not wearing masks, then you violated the 14th Amendment, the Equal Protection of Laws Clause, that each person is treated equally under the law, including the unborn, which is what that all comes down to. But no, the answer is, and that's why Governor Gianforte and other people in Congress and the Senate and the state Congress and Senate are saying we need these. And Montana was the first and one of two states, I think Florida was the other, that had the anti-discrimination against the Fauci ouchie, the jab, and said you can't be asked either way, right? You can't be discriminated against if you did.
Right to privacy.
And if you
And
didn't.
you can't, the true right to privacy, right? The true HIPAA, the true medical care all comes, and it says, so get the jab, don't get the jab. Your employer can't ask. You can't be discriminating. The government can't ask. And so I think that's what Montana is trying to do under Governor Gianforte and other people in Congress and the Senate who are trying to say we need to protect it through what's called positive legislation, not just leave it up to, well, we already have a federal law, but let's get state positive legislation. Same thing that happened in Ohio in the different direction. Let's protect abortion through the Constitution so the pro-lifers. By the way, I just wanted to point out, this is all legal stuff, but 40 days for life, God isn't bound by some state or some line. 40 days for life is now more important than ever in Ohio because it doesn't matter what the law, you're there for the last best hope.
And
where
we'll-
were you when?
yeah.
Here I am.
We'll grow.
Here I am.
We always say New Jersey, California, New York, these are our largest states. And it's kind of like, because we're the last line of defense, if something really bad happens in your state, we're going to grow there. It's kind of like you don't want a lot of 40 Days for Life campaigns in your state because it means you don't have that many abortion facilities. But we will have a lot of people motivated.
And it'll just be a lot more necessary, whether people
Absolutely.
are motivated or not. The efficacy, the effectiveness of it is going to be so high, and people will come out and say, "I didn't know that. They didn't tell me about adoption. They didn't tell me that my baby has a heartbeat at 7 weeks or 6 weeks or 5.5. They didn't tell me that my baby has 10 fingers and 10 toes. You know, all that stuff, the real life models, all that. If you can kill your baby up to 40 weeks, or have an abortion, or however you want to term it." End your pregnancy up to 40 weeks when you're 16.
It's just
Without the help, aren't your mom and dad supposed to help you out with major decisions when you're a kid?
Yeah.
It's going to be go time for us, but we're just so established in Ohio. We've also closed a lot of abortion facilities in Ohio, including Dr. Martin Haskell's abortion clinic, who literally, and I've been there in Sharonville many times. There's a pregnancy center across the street, Elizabeth's New Life Center. They're awesome. But Martin Haskell invented partial birth abortion, and these goofballs in the last 6 months who have been saying partial birth abortion is a made-up term by pro-lifers. No, it's not. It's a term just like late-term abortion. It's a term that was created by the doctor who invented it. This is from the abortion side of the family, okay? This isn't from our side of the family. They're like, they told us it's partial birth abortion. Do you know why Martin Haskell decided to call it partial birth abortion? Because you're partially birthed when he kills you. You know, it's like, if we're going to bury our head in the sand, let's just do it. But don't tell us that we're creating the propaganda.
We used to have a great board member that would say, you know, it's really easy to argue if the facts don't matter.
Absolutely. It's great. It's great. Oh, my word. Hey, speaking of Montana, where you live, so Kansas, North Carolina, and Montana now require doctors to provide life-saving care to abortion survivors. I hate reading this. It's awful. I guess we're at a place where we have to have these laws. The federal law failed, by the way, so we have, basically no Democrat voted for it. They want to leave the abortion survivors on the table to die. But it's just an odd sentence to read. Like, what What the hell is wrong with us?
Again,
We're just
and
having to have a law like this.
that's where my point comes in again. Didn't we already have a law that establishes that to protect? I mean, you're born, so you're considered a person.
There was no Born Alive Act. The answer to that one is definitely no. There was no Born Alive Act. So then they put on a Born Alive Act. To your point, that's a dangerous thing to do because most people are assuming, okay, but the kid's alive. My child's alive. The child's alive. The human being. No one life is life, right? There's no more debate. Life is life. Now you're just, I don't want it. I don't want that person. Well, maybe you don't want to take care of your grandfather either, but you can't sup him out. So they do that and they failed, right? The original Born Alive Act in Montana failed like 56 to 44 or whatever that is.
But I mean, to have a Born Alive, to have that law put into place in the first place, we are considered human beings from birth. So if you're born already, regardless of what was attempted to happen prior to that, doesn't that automatically mean you're protected?
Yes.
One would
So
think the Constitution of the United States.
exactly.
So I understand what
It
you're
applies
saying.
to people.
I understand what you're saying. I'm heartbroken on the decency part of this.
yeah.
How could you not help the baby?
Yeah.
You said before, it was a while back, but like most well-intentioned abortion doctors or even abortion supporters, if they're driving and they see a car crashed in the creek and they see like, a child
two-year-old
struggling,
drowning, yeah.
2-year-old drowning, they're jumping out of their car and they're running and they're rescuing the 2-year-old.
Even at great risk to themselves.
Right, but in this case, we have to tell them, hey, help a brother out. Be a good egg. We need you to resuscitate the baby that you failed to kill.
Yeah, could you imagine if an abortion doctor's going over a bridge and the mom's up there like looking over the bridge into the icy water, smoking a Marlboro light or whatever, and the abortion doctor's like, "Oh my gosh, there's a 2-year-old." She's like, "Yeah, it's my 2-year-old. Leave him." That's what they're saying. They're like, "Yeah, I'm gonna finish my Marlboro 100 first."
I brought this up. I knew you were going to switch it. You were going to have like the mom,
Well, I want them to remember.
Yeah.
60th trimester
want them
abortion
to remember.
happening right
if
here.
the tables are turned,
It's icy. It's cold. It's a 42-foot bridge. The kid's miraculously survived, and the abortionist wants to save him. And she says, no, that's the actual parallel.
Yep.
Because she said, the guy goes, hey, I tried to abort your child, but your child survived. And so we're going to take him to the ICU. And the mother says, no, you're not. That's what Governor Northam said when he was the governor of Virginia.
Yeah.
A
Right.
pediatrician
Right.
said, I'll tell you how it happens.
yeah.
Well, how does he know that?
Comfortable.
How does he know that? Yeah. Make him resuscitate him?
Yeah, yeah.
Resuscitate him?
We don't recommend Dr. Northam for
Pediatric care.
pediatric care. He's not
Or
on our
anything.
endorsement. Yeah, we don't endorse his medical
Do you
practice.
think he went back into medicine?
Oh gosh.
I don't like talking about him. I don't like his
love it.
the Southern.
You
I
put
don't-
him on our website.
He's on the intro of the
He's on
podcast.
the intro. By the
Listen to
way,
it every day.
can we remove him?
Yeah, no, where he's staying because he's, and the next thing they're gonna say is, well, he never said that.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know. It's everywhere.
Fauci never said that
Fauci
you
never
shouldn't
said
wear a
it.
mask.
Oh my word.
I was there. I saw it. No, you didn't.
All right, abortion pill restrictions.
Yep.
Kansas, Wyoming, and Montana.
This is a huge thing. I'd like to hear Heather on it because she must hear with the 365. This is such a complicated issue. You can't get your arms around this issue. It's so big.
And they're trying to push it. They want it in.
54% of abortions in America are what they call non-surgical or pills.
Chemical
They call it
abortions.
but it's taking these two pills. One kills the baby, one expels the baby. So they take these two pills. So the question becomes, and you can hardly even think of the questions. If Tennessee banned abortion, did they also ban pills, chemical abortions? What was it? Which state? Idaho said that it had to be in a hospital? Which
Well,
one?
yeah,
Not
I think Idaho. Texas is
But
yes.
Which is the one that said it had to be in a hospital? You just read it.
Arkansas.
Arkansas said it has to be in a hospital, though the abortion pills have to be handed out in a hospital.
And do they have to take them under the supervision of a physician, or do they hand them at the hospital and then go home and take
And
them?
if I live in Idaho that's banned abortion, can I call Hawaii
yeah.
and get them mailed to me
yeah.
in Idaho? And there are websites dedicated to how to get a P.O. box
Yeah.
in a different state that you can have automatically forwarded to your thing. And the Biden administration, are they allowing the United States Postal Service, the Postmaster General of the United States, to deliver these? And then we get the pharmacy issue. Well, if it's a state that bans abortion, is a pharmacy going to dispense the abortion pill? There are so many lawsuits. There are so many issues around all of this stuff. What I can say is if you are in a pro-life state that has banned abortion or has severe restrictions, and you know that a facility of any type or any person, remember we just went, there was a lady who's selling them as a lemonade stand, like a lemonade stand, or any person is handing out bags of these drugs, let us know. And we'll look into it. We can't promise that we're going to do something. But remember, what if you are a pregnant 22-year-old and in your state, your sister is a pregnant 16-year-old and she can't get the pills. And then you go and say, oh, I'm pregnant. I want to, and then she gives them to her. There are so many illegal transfers. That's drug dealing.
Yeah.
Right? That's drug dealing. That's why you can't give your Percocet for after your surgery to your husband when he has a headache. Because he didn't get them. He didn't have surgery.
Right.
And so that's called distribution of Percodan. And so, anyway, it's such a complicated issue, but we have this ability. Please let us know. Please let your leader know at 40 Days for Life, and we'll look into it. I don't know what we can do, but we are looking into the states that have mail-in abortion.
Yeah.
And also just chemical abortion and who can get it.
And some states ban it.
Oh, by the way, if you go and get your prescription, you have to be like 9 or 10 weeks or less, right, to get the pill to have a chemical abortion. What if you just went on a trip to Greece for 3 weeks and you left them at home and then you get back? Is anyone following up and telling you don't take them? Like you know that you're 8 weeks pregnant, you only have 10 days to take.
No, absolutely not.
Yeah, and then
that's why it's Wild West.
Is that malpractice if you bleed to death? Yeah. Or your baby is born horribly.
But this is the danger, and we fought them on it successfully so far, is the FDA saying, do whatever you want. CVS, Walgreens, and we sent that letter, and then immediately, what was it, like the 20 AGs came out and said, you're not doing this in our state.
And thank you for reminding me of that, and thank you and the board for supporting the Institute of Law and Justice. We have a doctor, Dr. Donato Barillo, who is also a lawyer on our team. He has filed objections in 2 different states to their abortion pills. He has filed comments to the Pregnant Workers Fairness Act, which was supposed to be fair to pregnant workers in the name, but actually was turned by the Biden administration into a vehicle to pay for women to have abortions and get time off and things like that. We filed a lot of comments about that, and it was really, really well done. I think better done than anybody else's, although, I'm obviously on his side, but I thought it was outstanding. We both reviewed that, and so many other things. So we can make these comments. That is how Texas banned RU 486. Mm-hmm. And I've been saying it to you for 20 years, but we need to go back to the rulemaking. And you're like, nobody gives about rulemaking. And I'm like, I know you don't, but if you didn't make the rule correct, the rule's dead.
Yeah.
It's what we call void ab initio, void from the beginning. And you were like, oh man, so it's like dead on, I said, it's dead on arrival. And you were like, great, do it. And Texas won. Now Washington the state of Washington countermanded at the federal court there. But we're fighting. But that's what we're looking back some 23 years, over 2 decades ago, to make sure, did they advertise it correctly? Did they hold the correct public hearings? Did they take the correct testimony? Did they consider the testimony of pregnant women, of young pregnant women, of the children themselves? And if any of that is no, then the rule's dead.
Exactly. And these are all the recent laws that we're covering, the pro-life laws. And in previous podcasts, and I said it earlier, the general outlook of the country is the number is about 23. 23 states have either banned abortion or highly regulated abortion. And it just goes against the narrative that they're all clamoring to go to 40 weeks. And you just never hear that. You never hear the good news. Okay, getting away from good news into bad news. These are the new pro-abortion laws. This is just the stupid trend. Attacking pregnancy resource centers. So the last 25 years, pregnancy resource centers have grown to where they now outnumber abortion providers 5 to 1 throughout the country. In a lot of states, it's like 6 or 7 to 1. They provide free medical health care to women. I've spoken at hundreds of these banquets and traveled around. Every time somebody comes up and says, I support abortion, but I love what these people do. I appreciate your talk, or I disagree with your talk, or whatever. But they're always there. So this is like, hey, even the pro-abortion folks like the fact that you have a pregnancy center giving free stuff to women who want it and seek them out for it. So they are now attacking the pregnancy centers post-Roe. Colorado and Vermont have targeted pregnancy centers for deceptive practices. Colorado banned abortion pill reversal, as has California. We've talked about that in a separate podcast. Promoting abortion pill reversal in Colorado is illegal.
That got stayed in Colorado. Bella
did.
Health just won.
Thank God.
Colorado got stayed, and California didn't ban it. They're just suing people who do it.
They're suing people who do it. Much better approach.
Vermont passed a tricky one. They said if you're a medical healthcare provider and you promote it, we'll take your license. So they attacked it indirectly.
But it's used
Like
the
you're
exact
promoting
same,
heroin.
right?
But if
Wow.
but if Heather went out and said, "Ask me about APR," that'd be okay. But
Unlike
if she were a
California.
pharmacist or a nurse, then they would take her license.
If you do that in California,
Oh, yeah,
by the
unlike
way, you
California.
hold our sign, ask me about abortion pill reversal.
Which I did.
Right. They will threaten to sue you or they'll come after you.
Mm-hmm.
We are not backing down from that. We're going to be able to protect our
Mm-hmm.
local leaders and volunteers.
Sean says this he loves saying this.
I do. Newsom.
Like
Newsom.
like he drafted
A
the
weird guy. This is
Bring
a
it
family
on.
podcast. Nukas can go. Yeah. So we're doing this, and
You said with his curly hair last time.
yeah,
He's got
his
straight
wavy hair
Doesn't
and all
matter.
this, his stupid AG writing this stupid law. So we're gonna have our signs.
That's just our opinion.
If he gets an ulcer, we'll be fine. We're gonna sleep okay at
It's
night.
not real medicine, they're saying, which is so ridiculous because they use these same types of things to help women to prevent miscarriages by, really increasing the amount of progesterone in a woman's body. It's just so stupid, and that's what they're
We did
basing
a whole
these things
podcast with
on.
Haywood on it. It is stupid. I hope they sue us. I want them to sue us. We should
Yeah.
write them a letter asking them to sue us because we're not going away.
I don't think you need to.
I don't think we need
You say that every 5 minutes.
It's just so ridiculous.
Yeah.
Well, it's gone one step further, Heather, which is why Sean's saying that. When you're saying they're saying it doesn't work, this latest, as I think the California Attorney General is suing under the false advertising statute.
Yeah.
So he's
Yeah.
not even saying like you can't prescribe this to doctors. He's not trying to get the California Board of Medicine or Pharmacy not to distribute. He's just saying you're lying.
But it's his opinion.
You know when you sell a car and you don't actually own the car, like on eBay or
Right.
whatever, and the guy shows up and you're like, this car is great. It'll run forever. Or a snake oil salesman. If you put this oil into your gas tank, your car will never break down again. And then they sell snake oil and they're gone. Well, that's false advertising. That's what he's saying. And people are going, but I took the first pill and then I took APR and here's my child.
yeah.
But
Here's my
also,
evidence.
It's just his opinion. So
No
if,
one's ever-
if
Yes.
we held a sign that said vitamin C helps your immune system, he can just wake up one day and be like, I don't agree with that.
Yeah.
I don't think
We'll
vitamin
find
C-
that out. That was not the case in Colorado. The statute there said these three agencies need to weigh in. We're going to find that out because it's not that's the thing, that's the tricky thing he's doing. It's under the false advertising, so it's not under the medical, so he doesn't really, but can he do that? And could you say, but remember, Sean, it's to a medical doctor. So he's saying that a medical doctor can't say, look, there's no studies on this, but I give vitamin C to my patients for skin disorders, and it has helped their immune system as well. I think you should try it. Then he can say, you're a liar. Yeah, no, I'm not a liar. I just told you I have 500 patients and help 480. Liar. I mean, like I said, when the facts don't matter, it's easy to argue.
It's easy to argue.
That's really what's going on.
So Illinois is on this list. They've been targeting pregnancy centers.
Really? That's
Isn't that
surprising.
crazy?
Surprising. Yeah.
Obama's personally been walking around the whole state, just targeting them. Massachusetts allocated $1 million for a public awareness campaign attacking pregnancy help centers. There's like 36 pregnancy centers in Massachusetts, and it's like the size of like my home county in Texas.
It's very pro-choice of them.
35 pregnancy centers. It's just unbelievable. They spent $1 million.
Yeah.
Choice doesn't mean what you think.
It's a
They
relative
could have
term.
like updated like the hot dog
It's a living
stands at
term.
Fenway.
living term.
Okay.
Love it.
Here, this is interesting. Shield laws prevent states from assisting enforcement of other state laws and limiting or restricting cooperation with investigations into abortion. So these are the laws that say, hey, you can't touch us no matter what other state, what other law they have
Having
on the
been an
books.
elected DA, this is terrible. So you swear to uphold the laws of the state, and then they pass a law that say you cannot enforce the laws of the state regarding abortion.
Yep.
And this is what on the flip side is DeSantis did in Florida, removing. We didn't have most states don't have that ability, but the governor has the ability to remove an elected local district attorney or state's attorney prosecutor. And he did it because the guy said, I'm not going to enforce the laws of the state. And you have district attorneys in Texas. Texas has true district attorneys, meaning multiple counties.
Yeah.
They have huge districts because there's not many people, a lot of land. And I mean, there's a lot of people, but in certain areas, you need a lot of counties to make up enough people to have a DA. And one or two of them, I used to know their names, said, we're just not going to apply these laws.
Yeah.
That's
The
nullification.
Harris County guy said that.
I don't know.
But
Is
Is
should be
that right?
fired.
Harris County is where Houston is.
Yeah.
It was a rural one and a big one. It may have
Okay.
been Harris County.
well,
It wasn't Johnny Holmes.
here's the good thing is the audience needs to listen to who's not on this list that has this, because this is not surprising. And this is why we're just not losing in a lot of these states, even middle of the road states. So the states that have this: Colorado, not surprising. Washington, not surprising. DC, not surprising. Hawaii, Illinois, Maryland, New Mexico, which is crazy. New York, Vermont, and Washington State. I already said that. So that's just not surprising. Not Missouri, not Wisconsin, not any of those like middle of the
It's
road
all the
states.
nanny states anyway.
It's all the crazy nanny states. Okay, here's another one.
By the way, New Mexico it was the last state to give us abortion before the Dobbs decision and has the most unrestricted law. For free, publicly paid for at any time, even by minors with no notice.
So this next one's nuts, especially if you're in these states and your daughter's going in for an abortion. These states protect abortion doctors from penalty.
Great.
You love indemnification.
That's what I was talking about, yeah.
Connecticut, Washington, DC, Illinois, Minnesota, Vermont. It's not a lot of states. But you can just kill the girl? I mean, how do you just protect an abortion doctor, any medical provider, from any harm? I know you don't have the answer.
I don't have the answer to it, and it's going to have to be litigated. It's one of the reasons you can't get your arms around all these litigations and things, and like, what does that mean, and is it well defined? And we were talking on a different podcast about this. Even the deceptive practices, the false advertising statute in California, applies to all 50 states. Apparently, I mean, it's just like so random. What they do, Sean, is they have an ideological passing of a law. And they pass it. They don't care whether it can be enforced because people know about it and it chills lawsuits. Or they go to a different state that has the law and they copy it, which is smarter.
Yeah.
Because if a different state has already litigated it, why not choose that? Which is what so I don't know the answer. I can't answer that question. How can that ever be enforced? You can get away with anything, does that mean?
I guess so.
Malpractice, you can come in knee walking, knuckle
Burn
dragging,
a
drunk,
cigarette in her arm.
cut off the wrong leg. I don't know.
So if a non-abortionist, a non-licensed person performed an abortion, would they be protected?
Inquiring minds.
That's next.
Want to
Okay.
know.
That is only. That's why this list is actually encouraging. That is only Hawaii and Illinois.
Oh, good.
That's 2 states.
Wow.
What happened to access to healthcare and protecting women and all this stuff? It's like, nope. There's 2 states that say, see, an RN can't do an abortion. That's pretty restrictive. It used to just be common sense, but we've gone away from that. Little things. This is another short list for college campuses. Only Connecticut, New York, and Vermont require state colleges to provide abortion access. That's shocking.
So does that mean you have to have surgical abortions on campus and chemical abortion distribution?
I bet that
on
law
campus?
is in left field and nobody knows what it means. Do you have to have an abortionist on campus in the school
student health
clinic?
center? Yeah.
But only 3 states, and they're all nuts. Hawaii has the University of Hawaii Medical School, and they are required to promote abortion in the medical workforce. Like, many of y'all are looking at oncology and OBGYN and many areas of medicine. What you need to consider is abortion. Hawaii is the only one promoting that. There's a huge shortage of abortion doctors in the United States. We've talked about that a lot. I'm just surprised there's one medical school promoting this.
Well, it's the only one promoting it by law. But I can tell you, as a matter of fact,
I was going to say,
that public medical schools. My daughter was going to go to medical school. One of the issues, she went to a great public university, and one of the things she couldn't get a square question on was because they were mandating an abortion rotation. You had to be present and participate in at least one abortion. And you couldn't get a conscientious objection. They said, yeah, you don't have to participate in abortion, but you also don't get to go to our medical school.
So it's like saying,
wow.
But it's not a state law.
They're acting like you refuse to learn how to put in an IV.
That's right.
Like you're no longer qualified.
We are not
going
to give you a medical degree to practice in all of its forms
because you don't
know how to kill people.
Mercy.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, could you imagine euthanasia if they added in like euthanasia and they're like, well, yeah, no, I know how to put a pillow over something. Like I know what.
Yeah.
I mean, like they're not going to. Like, what are you teaching me? I know.
I've seen Halloween.
I know how to. I know. I read the thing. It says maximum 10 milligrams, and I give them 200 milligrams, and they die. I get overdose.
Oh my word, that's great.
But it has to be abortion. Didn't Peter Kreeft say? We don't debate any of the great moral. Nobody says we need more nuclear weapons. We need more. But when it comes to issues revolving around sex, like abortion, we debate everything.
No.
Everything. What we need to do is kill more children. Just say it out loud.
Because abortion is tied to sex. That's how we got here. Okay, mandatory health insurance coverage for abortion only Illinois, Vermont, Rhode Island. And last but not least, Washington State authorized the Department of Corrections to acquire, sell, and distribute abortion pills.
You know, in the prisons and jails, sometimes they come in pregnant.
Yeah.
And then they don't want to have their baby in
Right.
jail. And what they're saying is they have to hand out abortion pills so that the woman in the penitentiary, and think how insidious that is. You could understand if you got a 6-year sentence and you were 4 months pregnant, not wanting to have your baby in the penitentiary and right? And how I'd never see him. Would I raise him? Do I see him through the glass? And they're like, it's a way of promoting.
But why are you having so you work in the Department of Corrections and you go to we got a meeting Tuesday and you sit through that and you're like, you're going to distribute abortion pills to the prisoners.
They want to, Sean. They don't want the health care.
Why wouldn't they just bring an abortion doctor in to do an abortion? Why do they want this series of pills and the woman bleeding out everywhere and this sort of horrible violence?
They don't bring anybody. Because they don't bring them. They have to transport them. They have to put 2 deputies on them. They got to put them in the van. No, it costs a lot of money. They got to put them in the van. Then you got the 2 deputies sitting in front of her door. She's shackled to the thing. Ugh. Nobody wants to see him in the hospital. And so the pills. I mean, like that's
But this is obviously not needed because one state's doing it. This isn't like a trend. Well, it's like, hey, how do you do the abortions in your prisons?
They're going to say, they're going to say they're on the vanguard.
I get that. That's what they have to say. But overall, with the bad news of Ohio, I think a lot of this is good news because some of these states that are doing new pro-abortion laws, it's just predictable. You could know that 5 years ago. If somebody told you Roe's going to be overturned, what do you think is going to happen? You'd have predicted everything we said. You wouldn't have predicted Ohio. It wouldn't have predicted Kansas. So it works against us as well. But the reality is we do have those 23 states. We have some states that are just all-out bans. We have nearly half the country with very regulated abortion. And I still believe in the heartbeat bill. I think it's very popular. The heartbeat bill, by the way, started in Ohio. they created it, and I remember when they announced it.
And the first abortion sanctuary legislation from that dude peddling it, they passed it before Waco or wherever it was.
Heartbeat failed in Ohio, but everybody else ripped it off because it was such a good law and very popular and gave the baby a heartbeat and gave, finances.
Can I say one other thing about what's going to happen after a long time, which is half the states ban abortion.
What's a long time? Like a year or 25 years?
25 years.
Okay. Are we alive in this scenario, I hope? Like we're going to live to see it.
Heather and I are. And so...
let me write that one down.
So...
Clock's ticking.
Absent migration, meaning people moving from state to state, the pro-abortion states will have such a huge population decline that they won't be able to sustain their economy. And again, people won't want to go there. So let's say that you have a very abortion-minded state, California, and a very abortion-protective state, Florida. You're already seeing migration from California to Florida.
And the governor's not pleading for people to come to California from Florida. The California governor's not doing that.
But if you talk about it as a country, how many people are in California? It's like bigger than most countries in Europe, right? If you talk about it as a country, it will have population decline as a result of, because they're at like 0.8, right?
Yeah.
Not having children.
Right.
So
Not
the state's
replacing themselves.
economy, and then they will rethink, and they'll start, this is going to be crazy, they will be paying for the abortion pill, and they'll be paying you to have children.
So that is already happening in Italy, Russia.
Yes.
Putin just started throwing money at people. Have children, build a house, we'll give you these tax incentives. I think France has it. And this goes back to
Canada.
Contracepted ourselves and aborted ourselves out of existence. And all these idiots that ran around and told us we're overpopulated were wrong. Now half the sociologists in the world believe we are underpopulated, and sociologists are all kind of nuts.
The demographic winner.
Exactly.
Yes.
And this was the problem. This was when they raised the hands to the baby boomers who did not have as many children as their parents and said, hey, we may run out of Social Security because y'all didn't produce any workers, you know? And there's that book, Freakonomics, which lays that out, which is great. It's a secular book because he talks about, abortion can help the crime rate. And everybody's like, I think you're a racist. And he's like, no, that's just the facts. Like, but that whole notion that you can live without having children is this like new concept that we came up with the last 50 years.
Well, you need immigration. I mean, look at Canada. They have 100,000 abortions a year, and they would have a negative population if they didn't have 250,000 immigrants. And so they were like, hey, we need more Canadians.
Yeah.
And so that the only way to do that is have, bad things happen when you kick God out of your country.
We need to build the wall and, the immigration problem. It's a huge problem. We need to deal with it. But the reality is that we're dependent on immigration to sustain our population, which is already underpopulated. And people hate that, and we're not going to get off on immigration, but
other countries have that too.
Absolutely.
Other countries have that too. And I don't know if you remember, you probably weren't born yet, you guys, but Ronald Reagan was going after a guy named Gaddafi, and the missile actually killed one of Gaddafi's children, as I recall, and he never really did anything much after that. And he said everybody thought that I laid down the sword because America killed my daughter, but I didn't. I realized that we will conquer the world with the womb, not the sword.
He's right. He's absolutely right. And that's you look at, we have to close out.
That's a good note to,
that is another good podcast.
I'm not positively quoting Gaddafi.
And we do have a population podcast. I don't remember the season, but if you Google it, we had Dr. Leighton Field, and it is on population. Are we underpopulated? I think we released it a couple of years ago. It was one of the most downloaded podcasts in the history of our podcast because we go through all of this on population.
Over 75 people.
Yep, he's a demographer. Yes, no. It wasn't 75.
It was like 75.
78,000.
Yeah,
70.
Yeah,
200 million.
That was awesome. It was like almost more than the population of the United States.
Exactly.
Which is odd.
Exactly. So
like
we're closing out. Thank you, Heather. Thank you, Matt. Please rate, review, share this podcast, and we will see you next time.